From the Fathead Studio in Speedway, Indiana, this is The Skinny.
Man, am I still pretty? And he's like, you ain't pretty, but you're going to be all right.
And now I'm just hanging on, looking at the wall, like flying this way. And I'm like, oh man, I got to let go of this thing at some point.
And then there's one that could literally pick you up.
Yeah.
It's
I'm not really sure about that, but yeah.
That's called a helicopter.
Well,
and the last lap was just chaos. I mean, like 4 wide, 5 wide.
It's like, whatever, if you land it and send it into the fence, you're probably not going to get hurt. Bounce, and then this insane roll, the car that Keegan was in. I mean, I don't know, it's the shape of the Beetle or what, but that thing sent it.
So I was the supercharger specialist on my old man's car with
Specialist?
Yeah, it sounds cooler than crew guy.
Hi, I'm Tony Stewart.
I'm Mario Andretti.
I'm Christy Lee.
I'm Alexander Rossi.
I'm Cruz Pedregon.
Hi, I'm Kyle Kirkwood, and this is The Skinny.
Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to The Skinny. We're in Speedway, Indiana. This is the Fatheads Eyewear Studios. I'm Ken Stout. That is Rico Elmore. The track dude has dug in deep here today and brought us a wonderful guest. That, of course, is Mr. Michael Young. He'll be running all the controls. And when I say a wonderful guest, we are talking about one of the young guns in the NTT IndyCar Series, driver of the number 27 Andretti Auto Sport machine, Mr. Kyle Kirkwood, now a 2-time winner. Congratulations, young man. You got over there with your boys again after having all that success in Indy Next, Indy Lights, if you will. And, boy, you guys found the magic again. I know Long Beach had to be a special day for you, man.
Man, it was. You know, I mean, getting that second win, too, with the team is kind of like, okay, we solidified ourselves. This wasn't just a fluke thing that we won at Long Beach, which I don't think anyone really thought that was. But for myself, I really wanted to continue that trait, right, as any driver would want to. But man, Long Beach was so special for us. It was a great weekend. We kind of just dominated all weekend, and then yeah, we had a couple tough races between then. Not many top 10 finishes. I think we only had like 1 top 5, and yeah, and then we were able to get that next win at Nashville, which I mean just shows our dominance on street courses. To be honest, that's just where we thrive. And we've been good at other events, but street courses have been our strong suit, no doubt.
Yeah, I look at Long Beach as just one of those special places. I mean, anytime you get a first win, it's going to be special, don't get me wrong. But if you can say you got your first win at Long Beach, it's just one of those historic, unique, special venues that seem to carry a little bit more weight than all the rest of them.
Yeah, I definitely agree. And one thing I found out just after the event was that Michael got his first win there. So, I mean, that was super special for me because Michael was up on stage talking about how he got his first win there, and then I got my first win there, and he was kind of comparing me to him, and I'm like, this is surreal. I never thought I'd be anywhere in the same realm of being compared to Michael Andretti. So, yeah, I mean, it's a staple race for us. It's the second. I mean, really, it's the second biggest race of the year, next to the 500. That's one race that everyone wants to win. And to be able to get it done as my first win is, I mean, you can imagine how special that was.
Yeah, super cool. And, you know, and you bring up a great point here. So we probably have to take a step back a couple of years into your Indy Next career with Andretti. But talk to us about what it was like to have those conversations and be able to make an announcement you're going to be driving with Andretti Autosport.
Oh, man. It was really cool. You know, it's something that I've always dreamed of, and it's the reason why I wanted to go to Andretti Autosport for Indy Lights, which is now Indy Next. And obviously we had a phenomenal season, winning 10 of the 20 races in Indy Next. And their idea was to put me into an IndyCar. And the way everything kind of played out was I was supposed to go into the 26 when Colton went on to F1. And obviously none of that happened. And I had to figure out a new home for IndyCar, and that was AJ Foyt Racing last year. So I mean, there was really never any plans specifically in place for me to go back with Andretti Autosport early on when I first signed with AJ Foyt Racing, but I had a kind of a preconceived notion that that's what I wanted to do. That's where I wanted to be. That is kind of my end goal is to be with Andretti Autosport and go after race wins and go after championships with them. circulated around a karting track just going out on practice days for 3 years. So I never did my first race until I was about 8 years old. Once people start to take notice of me and said, hey.
The Skinny is brought to you by Fatheads Eyewear. Fatheads Eyewear, hardcore since '04. And American Coach, innovation is our life force.
Welcome back to the Skinny. We have Kyle Kirkwood on the show, the only driver that won a championship in each of the ladder divisions on his way up to IndyCar. But we're going to take a step back even further, maybe a couple steps back a little bit further. Let's talk about how it all began, man. When did you get the bug? What was your first race car? How did it go down? Were your parents involved? Get us up to speed.
Yeah, so, I mean, I had a very similar kind of route to many of the drivers coming in. My family was never involved in motorsports whatsoever. My dad was a soccer player, so that's kind of where the competition side of it came from. My oldest brother was also a soccer player, and my middle brother wanted nothing to do with competition, really. He loved like fishing and diving and normal water sports things that you see here in Florida, where I'm from. But I started at the age of 5 in karting. So, I mean, and for us, it was just a hobby. It was something that me and my family could go do on the weekend. It's something that I love to do. And we didn't really know that it could turn into something bigger than what it was at the time. You know, it was me just going out to a karting track at 5 years old. And for the first 3 years, I just circulated around a karting track, just going out on practice days for 3 years. So I never did my first race until I was about 8 years old. Once people start to take notice of me and said, hey, look, you're talking to my parents, they're like, hey, look, your son's really good. You should start entering these races. South Florida has a huge market for racing in general. So that was kind of what kind of got my start in motorsports, was me actually going to races and whatnot in karting. I didn't get into my first car until I was 14, I believe, and it was through Skip Barber. It was through a scholarship. Pretty much all my car stuff has been through a scholarship of some sort, with the exception, I think, of like half a season in F1600 and a season in F4. So, I mean, everything's kind of been scholarship based. So I got my start in scholarship off of a scholarship in Skip Barber, where I raced MX5 Cup cars. It was a thing through karting where they give you like a certain amount of Skippy bucks, and you just spend it how you wanted to. So I spent it on certain test days out at Sebring. I did a couple races like at Laguna Seca, Sebring. I think Atlanta was one of them. So that's where I got my kickstart, and from there I kind of just moved up through the ladder system. Obviously, winning F4 U.S. Championship, winning F3 U.S. Championship, USF 2000, Indy Pro 2000, then Indy Lights, which is now Indy Next, before moving into IndyCar. So that's kind of the short summary of how my career progressed.
So you say you started at 5. So is this mom and dad bought you a cart at 5?
Yeah, exactly. So my parents got me and my 2 older brothers a go-kart for Christmas. And I was the only one that loved doing it. Like I said earlier, my oldest brother was a soccer player, so he was super focused on that, didn't really care for any of the karting stuff. And my middle brother didn't really care for karting at all. So it was really just something that I loved and something that I continued. I was also a soccer player when I was younger, too, and it got to a point where I was really good at both of them. And I had to kind of choose, like, okay, do I want to go the soccer route, which is a traditional thing that my family's done, or do I want to go towards motorsports, which is something that don't understand at all, but I'm also pretty good at, and people recommend that I keep doing it. So, and I love the karting thing, and that's what, and that's what I chose. I completely quit soccer. I quit the travel team that I was on, and just solely focused on motorsports, which was karting at the time when I was like 11 or 12 years old, which seems like, actually, you know what, I would have been younger. I would have been 10 years old. Which seems like a pretty big decision to make at that young of age, but it obviously worked out for me.
Yeah. So the 3 years that you were practicing and you know, kind of getting into it, exactly, did you have somebody that was training you, somebody that was working with you? I mean, Did you pick it up? Did you start following people on the track? I mean, how did you start picking up the skills?
A little bit of both. You know, I did have some guys that my dad would pay, like some younger karting drivers that were good, that my dad would pay to like help me out and kind of coach me through some things. But most of the stuff that I did, I figured out on my own. It was just going out, driving around other guys, and it's kind of just like a natural thing, knowing what to do to be fast, is something that I feel like I've picked up pretty easily. And I haven't needed a ton of help in my career, to be honest, with coaching or understanding certain things and whatnot. Usually I'm pretty self-sufficient with figuring out things, how to go fast in certain corners and certain track conditions, and adapt to those conditions well. So, you know, most of my career was just going out, doing laps, driving around other people, figuring it out, going through small data things that you can in a go-kart, which is really just which is just speed trace really, and referencing off of other drivers that are maybe out there, potentially on the same kind of organization that you're with, or a team. Usually in karting, you're with a team of 5 to 10 other karts, even if you're going out for practicing. So you kind of pull data and look at it. So that's something that I got pretty proficient at a very young age.
So did mom and dad, were they involved with any aspects of the cart there at any time? I mean, prepping the cart, taking care of the cart, making sure you were good to go? Or did he see the talent, recognize the talent through other people, and decide to put you on one of those bigger teams where it was all handled?
No, it was mostly just my dad and myself over a long period. Even when I got to like a national karting scene, and then it got to a point where people wanted me on their team, and they're actually not hiring, but they're paying for all my expenses, paying for all the expenses when it came to racing and travel and meals and everything like that. So nothing was coming out of my family pockets or mine. And I joined some of these bigger teams, right? Which at the time it was Ocala Grand Prix was a big one. Kart Sport North America was a team that I was with. Barrel Art, which is a factory team out of Italy. All those teams kind of picked me up at a young age, and I drove for them for a period of time.
Want to get the skinny on other guests and different types of motorsports? Check out our YouTube page and get the skinny.
Welcome back to the Fatheads Eyewear Studios. I'm Ken Stout, Rico Elmore sitting alongside. We have Kyle Kirkwood, the driver of the number 27 car for Andretti Autosport, sponsored by AutoNation. We'll get into that here in another segment or two, but we've been talking with him about his young career and how he got started. And you talked about Florida being a hotbed of racing. I know the Florida Winter Tour is down there. Stars of Karting used to go down there. I'm not sure what the equivalent to that is any longer. Obviously Daytona there during the holidays. Again, I mean, just loaded with hundreds of karters. So yeah, you were in a great spot to really be tested by some of the best. We used to call it the Florida Winter Tour, you know, was dominated by Tony Kart, which we referred to as the Dark Empire at the time, but they always had incredible drivers and cars.
Well, it's pretty cool. You know a lot about the Florida karting scene. I mean, you're exactly right, and I was kind of part of that Tony Kart era when Tony Kart was super dominant. It was between I think it would have been the start of or the end of 2013 through 2015-16. I was with Tony Kart on a bigger team, Ocala Grand Prix, which is a Florida-based team, and we were just super dominant. We won pretty much everything that we did, every championship. The Florida Winter Tours. We won at Super NASA in 2013, I believe. We were very dominant on those karts. So yeah, it's Florida's a hot spot for karting, and it still is. You know, I mean, especially in all motorsports, it seems like everything kind of migrates towards Florida. So it's pretty fortunate, the place that I grew up, where I started, because in the wintertime, you can't go really test anywhere. Even in IndyCar, you can't go test any tracks unless you have a combined temperature of 50 degrees ambient and 50 degrees track temperature. So the only time you're really going to, or only place you're really going to get that in the wintertime is a place like Florida. So everyone kind of migrates down here, and I'm fortunate to grow up in this area because I've been around motorsports pretty easily without having to travel a bunch, compared to if I was somewhere else in the country, right?
We'll shift gears off the karting thing here in just a moment, but I have one last question to ask you along these lines. Winning the championships that you won, talking about the Florida Winter Tour and how difficult it was to be successful there, where do you rate the win at the Supernats? I mean, dude, that is a stacked race.
Yeah, you know, that was my biggest win, I would say. When I was a young karting driver coming up through the ranks, winning Supernats was like, it was such a big deal. You know, and I mean, that was huge for me. And that's what kind of catapulted some of my karting career, right? Was when I got that first win, and then I went on to win tons of other championships and races and whatnot, up through like we talked about the Florida Winter Tour and stuff. But I still look back at that as one of my biggest wins in my career, because as everyone knows, I mean, the talent in karting is just as big as any other form of motorsports. You know, I mean, the guys I was racing against in Supernats when I was younger, not the year that I won, but there was one year that it was me, George Russell, Logan Sargent, Dalton Sargent, his brother, who else? Juan Manuel Correa, Colton Herta. I mean, Patricio Ward. I mean, the field was stacked with my era of karting, and honestly, those years were tougher because there's a lot of other guys that were at our level that didn't actually make it all the way up to where we're at now. So, I mean, it was really, really hard to win a race in karting, even sometimes harder than winning a race in cars. So, I mean, I cherish specifically that win, definitely.
Easily the move to Foyt, one would say, and I think you covered it really well. Everyone thought you were just you were on loan to, from Andretti to AJ Foyt Racing. But I thought was interesting was your domination, and I think with the announcement of Penske now helping AJ Foyt Racing, the damper package was one of the things I think the Foyt program struggles with the most. Overdriving a car, trying to make it do things that you were used to a car being able to do, and everybody, I think, was well aware you were going to win IndyCar races. But that year, what did you learn most from that transition from Indy Next to AJ Foyt Racing? Oddly enough, Scott Harner was your race strategist and ended up going over to Andretti Autosport for the first race. So what did you learn from that year?
Man, I learned a ton. I mean, there's so much to learn in IndyCar, and I'm still learning every single race that I'm out there, especially with the differences of running kind of mid-pack versus running up front, kind of how you control a race and the positions that we've been put in are something that I'm more used to, but it's also something that I'm learning a lot and with strategy and whatnot. So I'm picking it up pretty fast, to be honest, and there's still a long way to go, but I feel like I've gotten under a lot more control in the year and a half, or a year and almost 2 years now. We only have 2 races left. It's crazy to think. Almost 2 years now of racing IndyCar. I mean, I've learned so much over those 2 years. But I mean, for sure, last year, I tried to get way too much out of the car that probably wasn't obtainable, and that's something that, I've never been able to accept that a car is not good enough to win with. And I think that that's a terrible idea to have, I don't think it's good to go into a race and be like, oh, we can't win with this car. We might as well. At that point, you're just giving up. You've completely given up. You've given up hope. Everyone else around you doesn't like that. Your team, it keeps your team down, So for me, I mean, I always went into the races thinking, you know what, we still have a chance of winning this race, and I still have that mindset. Like this past weekend, we started 22nd. I knew there was still a chance that we could win. Dixon did it. He did it from like 16th. So I mean, and I don't regret that mindset, because I think it'll pay off in the long run. But it also forced me into a lot of mistakes trying to get too much that wasn't obtainable at certain times. So, I mean, I learned from it. I've kind of been able to accept the positions that I'm in, but I still wouldn't say that I go into races knowing that I don't go into the races with a preconceived notion that we can't win. You know, that's something that there was a lot of races last year where that was the reality that there was no chance that we were going to win. But I still wouldn't accept that because I wanted to keep everyone's hopes high. I want to keep my own hopes high and still be able to push the maximum, because that's really the mindset that you have to have. Is wild because most of us would be like, we need to pit. Something's going to come flying off this car. Get me in the pits. Get me new tires.
Welcome back to the Skinny. Here we're in Speedway, Indiana, just down the road from that famous place known as Indianapolis Motor Speedway. We have young Kyle Kirkwood on the show with us, and during the commercial break, it never fails. We have our best conversations. It seems like we kick it off, and he had mentioned something about Dixon, and of course we're like, yeah, Dixon just absolutely some sort of freak of nature alien that's making fuel there at the last race, and then, of course, we got to talking about him, you know, going that long stint on those tires, and nobody had any usage of the red tire there. You guys were, it was the first time that you had been on the red, so we said something about the tires just being a handful, and Dixon's reply was very short to Mike Hull, and you took off of that and said, yeah, there's a reason.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, typically, I mean, I think you said that the tires are terrible, you know? And a lot of times, if you hear someone on the radio, if someone's like, hey, how's the car? And they just say terrible, it's because they're absolutely having all their focus is solely on trying to drive the car and keep it out of the wall. So, I mean, if you hear those short answers, it's not because they don't want to tell you how bad it is and explain it, like they're not being informative enough. It's because they can't take their focus off, because they might end up in the wall if they can't just solely focus on driving. So that's where a lot of those come from sometimes, and I have that myself, you know, like when they ask me how the car is, and sometimes like I don't even answer because I'm just like white knuckling the car. I don't really know what to say at this time because I feel like I'm getting ready to end up in the fence. So
I kind of
that's
chuckled.
probably why you hear some of those.
I chuckle because I had the pleasure of spotting for Dixon. So I know when you hear his communication, it sounds like it's really not that bad. So in his case, I think he said the tires are not good. Well, what's that? And the tires are not good. Okay, but when it's coming from Dixon, and then if you look at Dixon during the 500 this year, when he was struggling there in that first stint, and he says to Mike Hall, how much longer do we need to hang on here? And then you see the outboard shot. I watched the race later, and the entire rear wing is vibrating. I mean, the whole car is shaking, and he's saying, how much longer do we need to hang on? You know, so the communication doesn't sound near as drastic as what is really going on.
Yeah, I mean, like those situations are wild, right? Like we had tire vibration issues all Indy 500 long. Every car did. Everyone had it. No one had it as bad as Dixon had it. And you know, like the fact that he's just like, oh, how long do we need to hang on to this for is wild, because most of us would be like, we need to pit. Something's going to come flying off this car. Get me in the pits. Get me new tires, because this car is pretty much undrivable, which is the situation that he's in. But he was pretty much just like, all right, well, we're already married to this. So, and he understands the strategy stuff, right? He knows that, like, if we pit now, this is going to ruin our race. And he understands that. So it's cool that he stays as calm as he does on the radio in those situations. It's something that a lot of drivers envy, I would say.
It was interesting. I called turn 2 for the radio network for the 500, and I was anything but calm when you went upside down. I think I came unglued when I saw your car get in the air when you hit Rosenquist. What a great run you had going up to that point. I think easily a top 5 potential for you maybe winning the Indianapolis 500. Walk us through that moment leading up to that incident.
Yeah, I mean, I'll walk you through that moment. But firstly, I mean, we were running that entire race kind of in the 10th to 15th range, and then we made one change to the car at almost close to the end. It was second to last stint. We made a change, and I just walked through the field right up to the front. Like the lap that we pitted for our last stop, I was right behind Ericsson. And if we would have went one lap longer, I would have been in the outright lead of the race at that point. So there was just one moment where we were just like, boom, now we're super fast. We drove the car to the front. We looked like Joseph did early on in the race. Like Joseph, and I'd say it was like Joseph and Colton in the beginning of the race kind of just drove through everyone right to the front. Colton obviously had the issue at the pit stop, but there was only it was really only three of us at the end of the race that I thought had cars that could win with. It was me, Joseph, and Colton. Colton wasn't really in contention. He was too far back. And it was me and Joseph that were kind of in that realm. Obviously, Joseph was right in front of me kind of when the incident happened. What kind of happened was Joseph passed. I think it was Felix. Joseph passed Felix. Felix got in his dirty air, washed up a little bit, got into the marbles, clipped the wall. And I had a car kind of between us at the time, and I wasn't so focused on what happened with him because it looked like he kind of just brushed the wall, then was just driving to the bottom because he was just going there because he was just slowing down. It looked like he bent a toe link or something. I didn't realize that he was completely out of control of his car, which obviously put me in a really bad position because I was just under the assumption that, he just drove down to the bottom. I'm going to stay in it. I'm going to get around him just so I can get back to kind of Santino and pack back up sort of situation. If I would have known that his car was broken, I probably would have backed out of it earlier and whatnot. So I put myself in a position that I had to push, and I see him start to spin, and my spotter's like, go high, go high, go high. Obviously you can only go so high without getting into the marbles and putting myself in the wall. So I'm at the limit of how high I can go. I'm pushing as hard as I can, and I have Santino Ferrucci also slowing up in front of me. So I'm now trying to hit the brakes, trying to avoid a spinning Felix Rosenquist without going in the marbles. So I'm kind of on the fine line of every moment, and I barely clip Felix's tire. I mean, when you look back at the video, it was millimeters of his tire that I actually clipped, and it just ripped the entire left rear assembly off the car and sent it flying over the stands, which I think everyone's kind of seen to this point. It was obviously a scary moment for me. When I spun and hit backwards, it actually didn't feel like that big of an impact. And when I was up on my lid, I didn't know where I was. It just went instantly dark. I was kind of pinned between the wall and being upside down, kind of right in the corner of the wall. And that just made everything pitch black, and kind of the contrast difference of going from bright, where you have your eyes wide open always at the 500, to being upside down up against a wall where it's pitch black. And coming off the vibrations that we're talking about, I really didn't have a feel that I was still moving, that I knew where I was. I was disoriented. I didn't know I was upside down. So at that point, I opened my visor to try and figure out where I'm at. I'm looking around. And it wasn't until I came to a full stop that I realized that I was upside down. And that was at the point where Brian Hurd is on the radio, like, hey, you're upside down. Don't unbuckle or else you'll fall out of the car. So I just stayed there. I was obviously fine. I wasn't injured at all. And the safety crew got to me. And I think from the time that I stopped to the time that the safety crew got to me, it was only 8 seconds. So, I mean, hats off to them because, I mean, they kept me safe for sure. But I mean, I'm fortunate that it wasn't anything worse. I mean, the tire could have went up into the stands. It fortunately went over the stands. Fortunately, I wasn't hurt. Fortunately, Felix wasn't hurt. Fortunately, no one else got caught up in it. I mean, it all played out the way, I mean, in very fortunate ways. I mean, it's unfortunate that we were out of the race, out of contention, but also very fortunate that no one was injured in that situation as well.
I think also extremely impressive. It would have never crossed my mind to tell the driver that you're upside down. Clearly, Herta understood, because he's been in the cockpit before, that there's a really good chance that you were disoriented, and let you know that you were upside down. I would never think about telling the driver, hey, man, you're upside down, don't unbuckle. That's impressive. That's pretty cool.
Well, one thing he said to me after the race, or he kind of said, he didn't say it to me, I guess he probably said it on the intercom. We kind of have recordings of all the intercom. he's like, man, I'm really tired of talking to drivers when they're upside down. And that's because last year at the 500, obviously Colton crashed in the final practice and was up on his lid between turn 1 and 2, and he pretty much had the exact same situation where I'm like, just get me out of the car, and he's like, don't unbuckle, else you'll fall out. So I mean, we pretty much had identical situations there. So so I imagine he is getting a little bit tired of talking to us upside down. Fingers crossed that doesn't happen again with him on the radio. Paved the way for a new route and new relationships and something that I didn't really expect that actually became a blessing in disguise.
The Skinny is brought to you by American Coach. American Coach, innovation is our life force. And Fatheads Eyewear. Fatheads Eyewear, hardcore since '04.
You're looking at Kyle Kirkwood coming to us from Jupiter, Florida. Hey, man, let's talk about your racing career here a little bit more. I'm going to take another step back here. 2016, you were trying to make your way up into the ladder division, and you were a part of the into that Mazda Road to Indy shootout, but you lost the scholarship to Askew. So I bring that up because clearly your family was not paying for you to go racing, so you had to rely on these moments to get inside of a race car. What was that like? How do you push through a moment like that?
You know, me and Oliver have been really close friends since I was really since I started karting. He started about 30 days after me. I literally just bought a house in Tequesta, Florida, which is a mile away from where he lives currently. So I mean, we've grown up in the same area. We started at the same time. We've had the same exact route. So I was super happy. If it wasn't going to be me that won that scholarship, I was super happy that it was him. You know, because I think we were two that were very deserving of it. You know, it was circumstantial in the sense that he got the scholarship. I think we were very comparable. He was put in a little bit better position, I thought, than what I was at the time to win that scholarship. So hats off to him because he definitely deserved it at that time. And it all panned out for me. You know, I ended up getting funding to be able to do USF 2000 through Cape Motorsports, the same team that he won the championship with and won a scholarship with. So I mean, it all worked out for me in one way or another. So I wouldn't change it. Obviously, it was disappointing not to get that scholarship and be able to jump into USF 2000 that quickly. But I mean, it kind of paved the way for a new route and new relationships and something that I didn't really expect that actually became a blessing in disguise. So I was happy that it turned out the way that it did a year or so later, no doubt.
Yeah, he certainly made the best of it as he worked his way up through that ladder division, if you will, and of course finally succeeded to the NTT IndyCar Series. We'll have more from Kyle Kirkwood when we come back.
It feels like it's something that's just starting and it's going to keep growing and they're going to keep doing wonderful things.
Welcome back to the Skinny. We have Kyle Kirkwood, the driver of the number 27 Auto Nation Andretti Auto Sport car in the NTT IndyCar Series on the show with us. And let's talk about your sponsor a little bit, Auto Nation. Pretty cool that you hop inside of the 27 car. And, of course, their efforts to raise awareness and funds for cancer.
Yeah, no doubt. I mean, Auto Nation is a fantastic organization. It was kind of founded by the Huizinga family when and Huizinga they own the Dolphins. They were part of the Panthers. They started Waste Management. Like, they're huge family in the South Florida region. So it's great to be a part of a kind of a South Florida division company or somewhere that's founded in South Florida. Obviously with Auto Nation, a big thing is Drive Pink, and their Drive Pink initiative does wonders for cancer patients and cancer research for centers all over the country, particularly mostly in South Florida. And I mean, I've seen firsthand what they've done with their patients and what they're able to do, and it's a wonder. They raise millions of dollars a year to help fund some of these patients and fund some research. So it's great to be a part of. I've done a lot of their events, a lot of their venues, and seeing some of the people that they've helped and how much it means to them kind of just shows how much it matters, and how much I enjoy being a part of it. So it's great to be a part of that. It's something that's going to continue on for a long time, I'm sure, because they do such great things with them, and it's cool to be a part of, right? I mean, the fact that I have a big sponsor like AutoNation, which they do great things in the motor industry, selling tons of cars. They're one of the biggest dealership owners, I guess, in the country. But not only that, but to actually make a difference in people's lives and help with things that help in a way that through my racing I can support some of these people and bring awareness and help fund some of these people that have these illnesses that can't get treatment without some sort of funding. So it's great to be a part of, and I'm thankful to be a part of it.
I think the coolest part of it with AutoNation is this is giving back, and this means a lot more than putting your name on a car, right? So, you know, the Pink Initiative, and Stout and I both of our daughters have battled cancer, his at a very young age, mine at the age of 28. So totally get it, totally appreciate it, and also appreciate the way you represent them and take care of business. So I think it's really cool.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, thank you guys for mentioning that. I mean, that's cool. It's cool to see like us actually make a difference. Like I said, I was firsthand seeing some of the patients and stuff going to the hospital down in Kendall, and it's a big deal, and it really showed like a new side of why they do this stuff and why they have the Drive Pink initiative and how much it means. So I mean, I'm fully on board with it, no doubt.
Yeah, I wanted you to talk about it a little bit, because I don't know if everybody understands when they see the pink car what that's about. You see AutoNation and you think maybe they're advertising for their company, right, to sell cars, but it's actually on the philanthropic side of their company, their industry, and they're raising money, like you say, for cancer awareness and to help a lot of people. It's super, super cool for sure.
Yeah, and it's still growing too, you know? I mean, like, for instance, it's that new stadium that's down in South Florida for the soccer team. I think it's like Miami FC. Is the Drive Pink Stadium, you know, and they're bringing awareness through that. They're raising money through that. That's obviously taken off with the addition of Messi joining that team. So that's why I say it's like it's something that is almost seems like it's just starting, even though they've raised so many millions of dollars towards this. It feels like it's something that's just starting, and it's going to keep growing, and they're going to keep doing wonderful things for these people that have this awful illness, right?
Yeah, very, very cool of them to do, for sure. Hey, stay with us. When we come back, we're going to ask him about some of the off-track antics that goes on between the drivers. He's always in the middle of it, or at least once in a while. Stay with us.
And then I started to help him. I was like, all right, so let's think about it. Like, who is childish enough to know what orgies are?
The Skinny is brought to you by Fatheads Eyewear. Fatheads Eyewear, hardcore since '04. And American Coach. American Coach, innovation is our life force.
There's a great shot of the Fatheads Eyewear studio, and of course, young Kyle Kirkwood on the show with us here this week as well, coming to us remotely from Jupiter, Florida. Hey, man, we kind of teased him going to break that you guys have some fun as drivers, and once again during commercial break, Michael has the best questions. Or actually, this time it wasn't a question, he just brought up a moment, but I happened to see the same thing on social media. I noticed that you were leaning against the door of a Porta-John, and it seems like there was another driver, maybe Felix Rosenquist, was inside. Were you trying to just make sure that the door was secure and nobody would open it up for him?
Yeah. You know, I was just helping him out. I was keeping him in there. It was just, I saw him walk in there. We were pitted right next to each other. This was last year at St. Louis Gateway race. We had a rain delay, about 50 laps to go or something. So we all had to get out of our cars, and we obviously raced into the night there. But I watched him walk in, and I was like I was super bored at the time because we're all just sitting there like waiting to go back out because you can't touch anything, you can't look at anything, you're just like sitting there waiting for them to say, all right, get back in your car so you can finish this race. And I watched him walk in there. I was like, it would be funny if I just like held the door on him and like made it seem like he locked himself in there. So I went up, and like as soon as he tried to push, I like pushed back to make it seem like everything was locked up. And and he's sitting there like shaking the door, like what's going on? And he's like, you could tell he had no idea that someone was like locking him in there. And I was cracking up on the outside of it, but I held him in there for about 10 seconds. I finally let him out, and I had no idea, but there was our camera guy for IndyCar was sitting right there taking video of the whole thing. Like it wasn't something that was like planned or anything. It just so happened that he was walking by, and he got the main social media guy that takes video for IndyCar was sitting right there to capture it. So it was funny. It wasn't planned at all, really. I just was like just trying to mess with him a little bit. Felix, a good guy, is a good guy. He's super funny. He takes all those jokes and stuff really, really well. So he's always fun to mess with, and he digs right back at you. So he's a good guy.
So there's the truth of it, ladies and gentlemen. They always build up all this drama. What are the drivers going to be like? Are they going to be able to get back in the car and get back in the proper mindset? Are they stressed out? No, they're just holding each other in the porta-johns.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Talk to us about some of that stuff, man. I mean, that has to be the initiation. So you're obviously talking about last year, your first year in the NTT IndyCar Series. How important is that? How special is that to know that you've been accepted by the boys and girls of the top tier level of racing?
It's cool, and some of that acceptance comes with like a little bit of college like hazing. I mean, they come in and try and prank you over the 500. Usually, if you're not getting pranked with and no one's messing with you, it's because they don't think you're that fun of a person, and they think that you're just going to take it too seriously. So you kind of want them to mess with you a little bit, and all of us kind of just dig back and forth at each other, especially during the 500, right? With Connor when he had that hot tub, and Alex decided to fill it with 9 million Orbeez, which absolutely ruined that hot tub for him.
He spoke of that when he was
happening.
He spoke of that when he was on the show, and then also spoke of how Connor was out showing it off and wanted to open it up, and this is my hot tub, and all of those things were in the hot tub.
Yeah, no, that's exactly what happened. He came walking over to my RV was like 3 over from him, and he came barging in. He's like, "Did you do this to me?" And I'm like, What are you talking about? He's like, you know exactly what I'm talking about. And I'm like, Connor, I honestly have no idea what you're talking about. He's like the Orbeez. And I'm like, what are Orbeez? I was like, I don't even know what those are. And he's like, he thinks I'm completely messing with him. He's like, you're the only one that's been helping me with the hot tub, blah, blah, blah. You'd be the one to prank me. And I'm like, I definitely didn't prank you. I was like, I was the one that got the chlorine tabs and stuff for it. Why would I? This is hurting myself. Why would I do this? But he was sure it was me at a certain point. And I finally convinced him that it wasn't. And then it was, and then I started to help him. I was like, all right, so let's think about it. Like, who is childish enough to know what Orbeez are and would buy these? We're either like, it's someone that acts like a kid, or it's someone that has kids. And so our first one that we thought of was Carpenter. We were sure it was Ed, because Ed is like stone cold, like would never show emotion about it. Yet he has kids, so it's like, okay, he knows what Orbeez are. He would be the one to definitely get some of these. Like I can imagine him having like a little pool outside for his kids with a bunch of Orbeez in it, right? So that was kind of like the number one suspect for a while, and then it's funny that it turned out to be Rossi, and I think Colton was probably involved too. But they weren't really people that we expected at the time, because I was trying to help them figure it out, to be honest. We thought it was Renus or Ed, because Renus can be childish sometimes, and Ed has children, so, and they're on the same team.
You guys were using logic. That'll never work.
Never.
Yeah.
Hey, man, thanks for taking the time to come on to the show. You have been an absolute pleasure to watch, obviously through the A.J. Foyt team there, your first year in the series, now back where you feel really comfortable with the Andretti Autosport crew once again that you spent so much time with, and immediate success right off the bat, already a couple of wins. You have such a bright future, man. We look forward to watching you develop.
Yeah, of course. Thank you, guys. Thanks for having me on the show.